But with the two lead herbs, Jinyanhua and Banlangan, being strong antivirals. So they're even taking this approach in China. All of the formulas that are being offered by the doctors are revolving around this theme. Give them herbs with strong antiviral properties. The other herbs that find themselves in the formula are Chrysanthemum Juhua, Pararia Gugen. Sometimes you'll see an herb called Dryopteris guanzong. Guanzong is not well known to Americans. If anything in the Materia Medicus, it's listed as a topical for fungus. But the Chinese decided a number of years ago that it was good in flu. It's not particularly good in common cold, but it's good in flu, guanzong. And guanzong was used a lot during the SARS epidemic in southern China. But you won't find that herb in any of the products that are available out there. Now, some people will have a damp heat presentation with vomiting and diarrhea, or they'll have fever with vomiting and diarrhea. And this is about the main differentiation we have to do from a respiratory or upper respiratory infection, is whether they're having vomiting and diarrhea. And there, for self-medication and to the practitioners, it was recommended that they use Huoxiang Zhengqi. I think everybody knows this formula. This is a Shi Chen Wen formula. Chen Shi Wen formula from 1080. Huoxiang means Bagastachi or Progostimum. Zhengqi, regulate or rectify the qi decoction pill. This medicine works a lot with turbid dampness that's in the system. You have herbs like Agastachi Huoxiang, Magnolia Hopal, Pinellia Banqiao, which clears out turbid dampness and drops it down. There's nothing in this formula that's antiviral. During the SARS epidemic, where in Hong Kong and southern China in March and April, it was a very hot, damp climate, there was a lot of this presentation of damp heat. And so Huoxiang was used a lot. To be honest, in my practice, we're not seeing that much diarrhea and vomiting, but Huoxiang Zhengqi would be the foundation formula, and you could combine that with Ganmao Ling or something like Ganmao Ling. What we're seeing a lot is that people are starting with a fever and going into a cough. So you have to address the cough situation if they're presenting with a cough. And here again, you would combine antiviral herbs with medicines for cough. Now the cough at this stage is not a very phlegmy cough. It's sort of a lung fire condition cough. You can use products like Belimcanda 15 from Seven Forests. You can put together formulas like Huanglian Shangqing. The trouble with Huanglian Shangqing, the commercial varieties have too much rhubarb dahuang in there. It'll cause too much loose stool, so you have to make it yourself. Plus, most Americans do not want to taste Huanglian in any sort of formula that they're tasting. So you need to lower the Huanglian, and that's why I like something like Belimcanda Shurgan instead of Huanglian, because the taste is actually better. When we look at some formulas that came out, here's a formula called the Preventative Anti-Influenza Tea, Yufang Liuxin Ganmacha. This came out during the SARS epidemic, this particular formula. It is not a preventative formula. It is every herb in here, except for one, have strong antiviral properties. We're using Isatis dachingya, which is the leaf of the Isatis. We're using Lanistra Jinyanhua and Forsythia lienziao. And then we're using Ilex ganmegun, that's the Ilex that was used in Ganmao Ling, and Chrysanthemum Juhua. Now Juhua is added to a lot of these formulas to bring the formula up into the head and chest, because it's really an upper respiratory infection at first. So you'll see Juhua in a lot of the formulas. Juhua is really good when the eyes get red and the body's dripping. And in this flu, as in most flus, it starts out as a dripping presentation. And incidentally, that's when people are most contagious, is when they're dripping and sneezing. That's when they're most contagious, less so when they're coughing. Yeah, now those are basically what's is the approach used for the actual infection. My advice is to follow the symptoms. If there's high fever, you can combine it with Bihutan, which is white tiger formula. That'll bring fever down. You can use the homeopathics aconite and belladonna to bring the fevers down. They will not bring it down much below 100, but they will really help to bring down a high fever. If the person's in a lot of pain with headache, I am not against using ibuprofen in this flu. So you can use that for pain and headache. I will say this, that one thing that's emerging from our naturopathic colleagues is the use of vitamin D. Now, vitamin D alone at 5,000 IUs a day is a good preventative. It's probably one of the best preventatives against flu. If you're actually sick, then I would say take 10,000 units of vitamin D a day. This is D3. And so people that are taking 400 units or even 1,000 units are way under prescribing. But if you can take 5,000 to 10,000 units a day when you're sick, that's what we'd recommend. I'm not a particular fan of vitamin C. I don't see any benefit from vitamin C. I keep saying vitamin D is the real vitamin C. It really helps the immune system. It really helps to mobilize the immune system to fight viruses. So those are the approaches that are being used in the acute presentation. In preventative, which I think should concern a lot of people, a lot of my patients come to me and say, what can I do to prevent getting the flu? Everyone in my kids' school has got the flu. What can we do to not get the flu? And I would do a two-pronged approach. I would use Yuping Feng jade screen as the foundation. You can modify this if you can adjust formulas. We'll talk about that in a second. But Yuping Feng as the prevention, and taking vitamin D at 5,000 to 10,000 units a day. Well, 5,000 units a day as a basic prevention. In China, there was variations off Yuping Feng, which might add in antivirals. For example, this formula, the 3 herbs of Yuping Feng were Astragalus huangqi, Atractylodes baiju, and Letabriella fangfeng. Now, how this works is the Atractylodes baiju creates the yin qi. The huangqi will help, it's very active and will help the yin qi dissipate out into the surface, which is what we call the wei qi. And then fangfeng gets it to the surface. So what we know clinically is jade screen is a very effective foundation formula for prevention of the flu. Now, some people in China will actually combine that with antiviral herbs. Now, there are pros and cons to this approach. The cons are the antiviral herbs are very cold. If you take them all the time, you're going to injure your stomach fire. They don't really boost the immune system. Taking Isatis or Lanisteride does not boost the immune system any more than taking echinacea and golden seal boost the immune system. What echinacea and golden seal do is they fight viruses and bacteria. So we fight the virus and bacteria if we think we've been exposed. Now, in a large contagion like SARS, everybody thought that they were getting exposed all the time. So they would take Yuping Feng and add in some antivirals. They would just add in Banlangun or Jinyanhua to that. I just think you have to think about what your risk is. On the first sign of symptoms, I would take the antiviral herbs for sure. So here's a formula where they took jade screen and they added to it Dryopteris guanzhong. Guanzhong is not as cold as some of the other antiviral herbs. You won't find this very easily unless you have your own pharmacy. But they would add in Lanisteride Jinyanhua and they would add in Chenpi. That's being recommended by the China Health Ministry to prevent getting sick.